Good afternoon. It's still May 5th, even though on my last blog I said it was the 6th. What I would like to do, I kind of feel like we've done enough storytelling uh, about story, and I think you're beginning to get an idea of what it was like for me as a youngster to grow up. So I came up with the idea that the simplest way to explain um, how we lived would be to propose and describe a quote typical day at Story. Now remember, I'm anywhere from 6 years old to 12, and so you have to take in mind, change in the growth of a person. But we would get up in the morning, have breakfast, and then we had some options. Um, Bud and I often went down to the woodpile and the little workbench and made boats and other war material, such as guns, hand grenades, whatever. Anyway, we had limited tools to work with, and our efforts came out accordingly. I do remember most the bark. We'd find tree bark off of some of the really old trees around Story, pine trees. And that bark would be 2 to 3 inches thick and, 4 or 5 inches across. And so it was really adaptable to making, anything from a destroyer to an aircraft carrier. And then we would attempt to float them in that little creek that ran um, behind the island, because it was very slow moving. I have to confess that fortunately none of that woodwork has survived, as I would be embarrassed, I think, now to show my efforts. We had a hell of a time trying to get those pieces of bark to float upright, particularly after we'd carved away on them. But that was one of the options that we had. The other option would be we might grab our fishing poles and go fishing. We were unescorted, with the exception of the 2 Labrador dogs that were with us. Mandy was Auntie and Uncle's lab, and Katie was my lab. I think the folks really depended, probably a great deal more than we realized, and we didn't even think about it then, but they knew where we were by where the dogs were. They, I think, were our uh, angels in disguise. So we would maybe fish. We had the option of playing horseshoes. We had the option of just plain goofing off, which was probably the bulk of the time. There were several trees, great big pine trees that were, well over a foot in diameter, that had grown up and then had curved. And so you had a built-in staircase or ramp, more likely, to start up the tree. And these are where we put our tree houses that we so diligently slaved over. Wood was hard to come by, and so we had to improvise again a lot. We'd stop, have lunch. A nap was probably in order. At least our folks thought so. But it was a good time to read and to be read to. And of course, in that day and age, we had only comic books, basically. Except when we were older, we could read, the paperbacks. So that took up part of the afternoon. And then you could count on from about 2 o'clock on that we would be at the river.